Hi there, welcome back to Burbex, Brin's Urban Exploration. Today is another episode, the third episode of Burbex Background, where we look into some of the deeper history, some of the deeper background of the places that I visited in the past. You can remember that in the first episode we looked at Die Glocke, the so-called Nazi bell, which was a mythical Nazi weapon during the Second World War. In the second episode, we actually looked at a Japanese death cult, and we looked at the location of their poison gas factory hidden in the suicide forest, which I'd actually visited and I hadn't known about it. In this third episode, we're going to take a look at the abandoned submarine base, which I visited a couple of months ago. You may remember that I went to the tropical island of Hainan, which is the southernmost part of China. And you could see me swim across quite a wide channel to get across to an island where apparently there's a submarine base. We actually went around some of the tunnels there, but we couldn't get into any of the tunnels. Now, a few viewers were a little bit skeptical that there's actually any submarines on that island, and they were saying, well, it was just clickbait, we didn't get to see any submarines, there's no base there. Well, what I want to show you today is actually just how close I was to that submarine base and how lucky I was to get out of there without getting in any trouble. Before we jump into today's great episode of Burbex Background, please don't forget to hit like and also hit subscribe. And when you hit subscribe, don't forget to ding, ding, ding that bell for great new videos from Burbex, Brin's Urban Exploration every week. Let's go. Now, as I mentioned a couple of months ago, Nightbird and I, we went on a road trip right down to the southernmost part of China. It's a big island called Hainan. 2 days into our trip, actually coronavirus kicked off, which limited our journey a lot. And actually when we got to Hainan, when we got to the beautiful tropical beach that we wanted to get to, we were actually put in lockdown on the beach, which meant that we couldn't go anywhere. Now, the whole time I was sitting on this beach, I was looking directly across the bay and I could see a tunnel, like a tunnel that led into the island on the other side. And it looked like it had two big gates which were closed. And this, of course, got my imagination burning. I knew from my background knowledge already that there was a submarine base somewhere on Hainan Island. But I didn't realize that actually we were directly across the bay from the backside of this submarine base, which is called Yulin Submarine Base. I actually managed to swim across the channel using a boogie board, and I cut up my legs on cactuses and stuff, but when we got to those main doors, they were actually sealed pretty tight. It would be impossible for me to swim down and get through those doors. After I released that video, a fellow YouTuber called Snarky Guy, he actually told me that below those gates, the water kind of goes underneath the gates. So the gates only go down to the water level, and there'd probably be like tracks or rails that go under the water to let ships and submarines in there. So it actually goes under the island. Now, a lot of you were actually very skeptical about how close I was to Yulin Submarine Base. What I want to show you is just how close we got, okay? And I think you're going to be really surprised how close we got. If we're looking at Hainan Island, this is very close to Sanya, and we're just zooming in on this part of the island. You can see that there's this kind of curved bay, right? And we were on this curved bay, and right across I could see this tunnel. You can see it just in the middle of the screen here. We're going to zoom in on that a little bit. You can see that there's this tunnelway, and I was looking at this every day, and I just had this huge urge to get across there. So what I did was actually I swam across and I managed to get to the entrance of this tunnel. Now, if we move the map a little bit over here, you can see that in this square area in the middle, this is actually where they used to build Chinese battleships. And this place was actually called the Oven at one point. You can see a lot of it's been demolished now. And actually, if you look just around this area where there's been a lot of demolition, we drove right up to the edge of this area. We drove right to the end of this road, just around here. You can actually see some footage of it right now. My feeling is that this is all ex-military base. It was just around this area, and you can see that there was a lot of abandoned naval buildings in that area. The Navy is actually run by the People's Liberation Army, the PLA, and they actually have another acronym which is PLAN, People's Liberation Army Navy, or PLAN. This whole area, in the past, this was an important outpost because this is the most southerly part of China and is the closest point to Vietnam as well. This is quite a touristy area just in this area here, but also there's a naval base further south that we can see. Now if we go south and we follow the coast of this peninsula down, we can actually see the submarine base itself. If we go right down to the tip, and you see that there's these artificial areas, these artificial outcrops which have been created, and if we zoom in, what we can see here is this strange looking outpost. Now this outpost is actually what's called a demagnetization facility. A demagnetization facility, submarines can go into this facility and the submarines will be demagnetized, which is to say it removes the magnetic residue from the surface of the submarine, which means that it's less easily detected by enemy ships. Another advantage of demagnetization is that mines which are triggered by magnetization in the water, for example, will not explode if the submarine goes close. If there's any magnetic residue left behind, it might activate these mines and cause damage to the submarine. This demagnetization platform is a very strong indicator that there is the presence of a submarine base in this area. Also, if we look in the demagnetization platform, we can see that there's what looks like some kind of spy ship there. In Shanghai, if you go to the seafront and you try to sneak in, you can actually see one of these old spy ships which has been decommissioned. I wasn't able to get on board, but I was able to take some drone shots of that, which you can see right now. You can also see that there's vertical takeoff for large drones and helicopters, so these would be an important part of the spy facilities of China's PLAN. Now if we look down the coast here, we can actually see that there's some outcrops and tunnels have actually been dug into these outcrops. China tends to build bases into rocky outcrops which provide many feet of overhead protection. The entrance is usually facing inland with water access, so it's harder to hit these facilities from offshore. Now here you can see we actually have 4 platforms here, and from these platforms submarines have been observed emerging. You can see also there's a lot of facilities here for naval stuff. And you can see it's a very large complex. Now if we focus in on the tunnel area, we can see that there's a tunnel which has been dug into it, and this is the main entrance into the facility. It's estimated that there's space for up to 20 nuclear submarines contained beneath this island, and these are nuclear ballistic submarines. That's to say they're nuclear powered. This tunnel is also large enough for aircraft carriers. Now, even though there's enough space for up to 20 nuclear submarines in there currently, the US government estimates that there's only 5 submarines in there at the moment, and those are Type 094 nuclear submarines. Each of those carries 12 JL-2 Intercontinental Ballistic Missiles. These have a range of about 4,500 miles. That's about 7,500 kilometers. And each of those carries a warhead. Each of these 094 submarines, the so-called Jin class, Jin means golden class, each one costs about $750 million to build. So you can see that the PLAN is making a significant investment in the South China Seas. Now, China often says that that's for defense. It says that it's not an aggressor, but this also helps to support its claim over the disputed so-called fishing islands, the Spratly Islands, and also maritime border disputes with Vietnam. This base is supposed to be a secret, and throughout China, most Chinese people don't even know it's there. On Baidu maps and other local maps, this area is all blacked out, so you can't actually see what's on the island, but ironically, if you use Google Maps, you can see it. The surprising thing about this base is actually how easy it was to get over to the rear side of the base, and it really made me wonder if I'd swum underneath those gates that you saw, if I'd be able to swim into the central core of the island, where apparently there's a lot more tunnels. This tunnel strategy is very common along the Chinese coast, and you'll find many submarine bases and many battleship bases as well. So that was just a quick video to give you a little bit more background about the Yulin submarine base. If you're interested in kind of naval matters in China, be sure to check out the original video which I made, where I actually swim over to the rear gates to the submarine base. But also be sure to check out my Minsk videos, part 1 and part 2, where I explored an abandoned USSR battleship called the Minsk, which has been made famous not only from Hunt for the Red October, but also the computer game World of Warships. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and maybe you've learned something new. If you've got any more information, please leave it in the comments. Remember, Burbex Background is not for me just to lecture you. I want to learn things from you guys as well. You guys are my most valuable resource. I've learned so much from all my viewers so far. Remember, if you like this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that subscription button and ding 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 that bell for great new videos from Burbex, Brin's urban exploration every week. Let's go.